Well, I'll tell you what, let me, I'm going to ask a few questions and then we'll kind of, because I think it's so important to see all the different projects that Nina has been involved with and engaged in, so you get a sense of the different issues that she, really complex issues that she plays with and presents. So just to kind of get a sense of really the range of what she's been doing. But as with any artist talk, I have to ask about influences. And you said something about your father. So, okay, wait, back up. So, so your father, commercials, Barbie heads, fill us in on that.
Yeah, so yeah, my father worked on commercials and like industrial, sort of industrial sizzles and things like that. So I grew up around like Barbies and Cabbage Patch Dolls and also Honda. So I was around a lot of cars, and I was a hand model on a few sets, and also I would just like thought it was cool to like be on a car commercial set. So I was around cars a lot, or I was in that environment. Yeah. Also, as far as influences, I think like, well, Cindy Sherman, like obviously, and like Caleb Lindsay, also more recently, and like Stanya Khan, probably like a lot more recently. But I don't, the earlier stuff, I guess it was, well, Gerhard Richter for the painting stuff, like his portraiture.
Yeah, and we'll kind of get into questions of the way that you kind of subvert certain tropes or certain types, the way that you kind of respond to them and seem to kind of blow them apart, and instead of taking kind of a one-sided character, one-sided presentation, make it a lot more complicated and multifaceted. Another thing I wanted to ask you, when you left New York to relocate to New Orleans to go to graduate school, what was that experience like, leaving New York and then being in New Orleans, and how has that influenced your work?
Yeah, well, I was in Philly for a brief period between them, and I think it really. But when I was living in Philly, I was still working in New York, so I was like commuting on the Chinatown bus, like for my day job, which was not so fun. So then going from that kind of like hectic, crazy like schedule, and I was working for other artists in New York also, to going to New Orleans and starting grad school and having like all this time to myself, and being in a much slower city and a completely different culture. Well, for me, it gave me the time to develop my work, and then I guess influentially, I'm not sure. Like, I'm sure there's, well, for me, it gave me the freedom to like really explore my interests without being worried about everyone around me doing, this is more like of a career comment, but like everyone around me trying to do the same things also and competing for the attention of, you know, the more influential people. So that was good, and it I was able to really like just do what I wanted to, and yeah. Also, New Orleans has a lot of characters and a lot of weird characters that you can't pin down. And you were talking about multidimensionality, I think, to representations, and yeah, everything wasn't, you know, just being around New Orleans characters, you couldn't say, oh, that's like the person from this show, or this, or like that person from that movie, or that celebrity. They're just really unique, interesting people everywhere. And I think I started to gain like a real appreciation of the weirdness of culture, and culture that, things that you can find that they're not mainstream, and they're not counterculture, and they don't fall into any kind of category, and they're not rebelling against any specific thing either. They're just there, existing in their own little vacuum, and yeah, I think that was a big influence.
Well, and I think in watching really any and all of your work, that humor plays such an important role, and really allows you to connect with the viewer, and to kind of get at kind of more nuanced levels of what you're trying to communicate in your work. And is that just a part of who you are? Is that something you're interested in with the video projects, or how does that relate to what you do?
It's definitely a part of who I am, and probably my conversations with, part of my personality. It's also a way for me to put a buffer on some of the stuff I think would be like a little too melodramatic without the humor, and I don't mind melodrama, but it's also just not honest for me. Like, I have to put the humor in there to be honest, because I think, at least in my experience, and maybe that's part of living in New Orleans too, like there's never something that's so awful that you can't kind of, well, I mean, that's not necessarily true, but you can always laugh about something or smile about something or find like some kind of hope in something. Yeah.
So it's within you and really kind of a spirit that is kind of found in the city, or it's kind of free-flowing or something.
I think so. Yeah, and I mean, you can't really, it's hard to talk about trauma. How can you talk about trauma also without humor sometimes? It's like, after, tragedies happen, and then, after a certain period of time, you can make a joke about it. So I think that's part of it.
Well, and let's go back to trauma and let's go back to humiliation. I just want to kind of talk about another point first. I think what's really interesting in your work is that you take these types and you're very subtle, I think, in setting them up. So whether it's a porn star, whether it's a hooker, she did a project with a live reporter called Live Report. She was a traffic reporter, and she had on the kitten heels, and she had on the black pencil skirt and the button-down shirt that was unbuttoned, right down to here, and the perfect hair, and she's got the traffic vest on, so she is to the T what you would expect, kind of the stereotypical reporter. And then she starts to wander around, and she's trying to find the site, and where is the camera? She can't find her camera person. She becomes lost. And so as you kind of take the character through that narrative, it's not kind of a one-dimensional traffic reporter, or kind of someone that we can take 2 seconds of and kind of walk away for the day. It becomes a kind of a multifaceted, more complicated character. And again, it's with types of women. I mean, types of women that are typically seen as flat, one-dimensional, and often maybe seen as kind of consumable and to be thrown away or something. And you complicate. I mean, it seems that you complicate that. And is that an intent, or?
Yeah. Well, because I think if you just present one dimension, then it can be parody, or then you're, And I don't ever want to make parody or just a straight dramatization of something. And that project specifically, I deliberately put her in this like masculine work environment, where like construction zone. And I have a clip from that later that I'll show. But that piece also was definitely inspired by, they shut down like the mental health program at like the main hospital in New Orleans. So there's a lot of mentally ill people just like with no aid just everywhere. And so that sort of inspired that piece. You just see people like wandering around on our medians are called the neutral ground. So just wandering around on the neutral ground, and then there's construction zones everywhere, and I was just driving and I was imagining, what if like it's like zombies or something, and everyone's just like walking all over the highway or something. So that kind of inspired that piece, but I'll show that in a little bit.
And also that kind of sense of it's a public space. I mean, it's where people drive and how they get from one thoroughfare to another. But this sense of the conversation that she's having, the trouble that she's having, the people that she encounters. I mean, it's just kind of that intersection of public and private that also makes it more interesting and a little bit kind of gives it a different level.
Yeah.
And talk to us about whether it's in Squirting or whether it's in Babe's Rental, but you had mentioned this whole notion of degradation and trauma and the way that a character, or not a character, but I mean the way that we enact that, you said, in kind of everyday life, or the way that you try and recreate that in your projects, and what, I mean, to what end or to what benefit?
Well, I don't know if there is like an end benefit, but I think for me it's taking that, like, not just my experiences, but those you see when, just around you in public or on television, or, of anybody, women or anyone who's like, marginalized by society, or, and taking that and, okay, like I'll just say, for instance, okay, like some woman walks down the street in like a sexy little outfit, and all these guys are like yelling at her, and that's humiliating, So it's taking that situation and then controlling it. So I'm inserting my own control, let's say, like in squirting, I'm inserting my own control over this situation, over, you know, ejaculating all over myself, and I'm making my body disappear, you know. So I think it's for me, it's about controlling a situation, or like harnessing that negative energy and turning it into a more powerful experience, and then communicating that.
And within squirting, there is that issue, the way that it relates to porn, the way it relates to, you know, this idea of watching a video, you know, for masturbation or ejaculation, whatever. But there's also a sense, I mean, I read in it also, you think of its ties in art history when you think of Yves Klein and take in the late 50s, and he would take the nude women in the gallery and smear paint all over them, and he called them human brushes. And these women, they would drag them across dragging women, like across the, you know, as a feminist, oh my gosh, I'm just perplexed, but dragging women kind of across these canvases to make these paintings. And it's interesting how you had mentioned, you know, I mean, you kind of think of them as nude, therefore to be visually enjoyed and kind of displayed for pleasure, and being used. I mean, being used and consumed, and that, you know, but yet it's Klein who's the artist, it's Klein who's the genius. And so as a feminist there, I've said it, self-admitted feminist, that's on the table, I've said it. But so I just think the way that it relates to that, because in the sense that you are ejaculating, you are squirting onto yourself. I mean, you are the artist, you are the maker of your own, and I like the way that it kind of complicates this whole kind of pin-up persona that you start out with, and again, how you mentioned it kind of takes control and responds, I mean, I think, to Klein in a way anyway, so.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I am the phallus, you know, like, there, I said it.
Yeah. And which leads to my next question is, how do feminists, and maybe it's me, or maybe it's kind of an older generation of feminists, but have you had any response or reply to your work from them, or what comments have you gotten?
Not really recently. There isn't like a huge feminist academic presence in New Orleans, so, and I've shown mostly around there. So I haven't really had to have those conversations, those like heavy conversations.
Because it's problematic. I mean, I'll say. Let me just say, and I'm not trying to knock you, but in a sense, because you are taking on that imagery, you are performing that imagery, you're putting it out there again, but you're not putting it out there. I mean, yes, it's entertaining. I'll be honest, it's very entertaining, and sometimes I can't look away. But it's also, so on one level it is enticing, right? But then you also kind of subvert that, and you twist it, and you kind of take it in an unexpected direction, and you kind of deny that enjoyment that one might have expected from that type, you know, and I think that's what's kind of like the pleasure in the work, you know, because you think it's going to, because you're using a specific trope or type, and then you twist it and you kind of take it in a different direction, using your control. I mean, you become the controller, the creator of it. And I like that. But it's complicated. I mean, it's not, it's not kind of, and I think that's why we all like it, you know, but I just had to put that out there, I'm sorry. Another question that I wanted to ask is, these, again, all this kind of intersection of issues and questions, why yourself? I mean, and I'm not questioning that, but I mean, I'm just interested, in that initial choice to perform the Amy Fisher, but you keep, you are the model, you're the actress, you're the creator. I mean, is it because it's you know what you want to do and it's the easiest way to execute that, or what? Yeah.
Well, I think as it started, I'm terrible at directing other people. Like, I've worked with other people a few times, and I have to be like very close to them, because with myself, I'll put myself through like torture to get what I want, but I'm really not good at asking that of other people. So initially, yes, that was part of it. Also, just having like complete control over something, and also, it was for the Kate's project, and I was going to try to cast all of them. And then I was like, wait, I could just play all of them, and that'll be more interesting, maybe, than trying to cast people who just look or act like these people. It'll be more interesting to transform it and just play all of them. as a project. Now it's at a point where I do want to work with other people, but the work would be much different. Like, I'm going to continue to use myself, but I do want to do like more collaborative projects. I've done a few.
The semiotics of the taco.
Yeah, semiotics of the taco. That was so fun. And I was like, that's not on here. It's on the internet. You should check it out. It's great. I worked with my friend Sophie, and she's just so perfect because she's so Martha Rossler, and her delivery is so deadpan, where as if it had been me, I would have had to go into character or something. It was just perfect for her. Yeah.
Do you could talk about a recent project, the show you have currently on?
Sure. Yeah.
That's
Sure. I'll show some. I'm gonna skip ahead a lot. I have way too many slides. Oh, here are images from the traffic reporter one, just so you know what we were talking about. So, yeah, there was a lot of traffic. There I am. It's funny, now this place is like, there's a highway there. So, and this was a performance I did after that, kind of based on it. Okay, so my current project, this is Veronica Compton, and my current project, my current show is based around her. These are two images of her that I found on Google, and she went to prison in 1981 for her involvement with a serial killer. This guy, Kenneth Bianchi, he was the Hillside Strangler. I don't know if you remember. Him and his partner killed several women in Los Angeles. He was locked up, awaiting trial. She contacted him in this pen pal kind of relationship as research for a play she was writing. She was from Los Angeles in her early 20s. She was an artist, a playwright, and she wanted to get inside the mind of a serial killer. So he got inside her mind, it's more like it, and she tried to kill a woman in order to try to prove his innocence by doing it in his style, and then planting his semen on the body, which she had smuggled out of his prison cell in a rubber glove. It's a very elaborate plan. So I was fascinated with this story, like that someone would go to such great lengths to, would be so obsessed and like sort of fanatic over this guy who she had first just seen on television and been so like captivated by him to go out with do such an outrageous plan. So this is my recreation of her. I kind of just combined these. So my current show at Good Children is a fictional archive where I created all these documents, photographs, paintings as her. So there's these photos that she supposedly sent to him while he was in prison. There are letters. Here's some of the photos that she sent to sort of, show that she was a sexy girl, to get him interested, show she was kind of kinky. And that's real. This is all based on a real story, but I invented some details. This is an image from the actual motel where she tried to strangle this other woman. Here's the back of the postcard. I wrote this poem on it. And this is in Bellingham, Washington, which sort of interested me as a place, just as the Pacific Northwest has this sort of criminal kind of like aura about it, like Twin Peaks, and there were a lot of murderers there, and River's Edge.
Right.
Yeah.
That movie from the late 80s or something. Yeah.
And so these are Veronica's studies she did of Kenneth Bianchi, her love. And these supposedly are drawings that she did of his victims after she was incarcerated. So there are some drawings. And this was really I really took this on as an opportunity to kind of work with all these different things with painting and video and photography and just setting up a whole narrative based on these artifacts. And really go into character as another artist to create an exhibition. And these are her paintings of his victims that the image is based on newspaper photos. This is her first letter to him, where she asks him to read over her play and give him her thoughts.
And her play, The Mutilated Cutter, right?
The Mutilated Cutter. And she really did, this woman really did write a play titled The Mutilated Cutter, but I invented the actual contents of the play. And she's still alive. She's out of prison now. I have not contacted her. Yeah, I know. So there's the play framed. Here's a painting I did. This is a study of the glove. He tied it with a rosary. And this is a video still from an interview with her.
And so what's shown in the gallery, so you have letters, you have paintings, you have, well, your paintings based on her paintings of the victims.
Right.
So it's this whole kind of sense of archiving it and documenting it, but it's in your hand and not in hers.
Right. And not too much is really based around her. Like I took a lot of liberties. Like the paintings are not based on her paintings. Like they're based on my own interests in painting, and then I could just kind of appropriate her personality to channel them. She is kind of, the actual Veronica Compton is kind of like an outsider artist. Not really. I found like a couple images of her work, but they're like of women like tied up or something. I don't know. So, but what I tried to do was create like the paintings that she would have made in like 1979, as she's becoming fascinated with like this media coverage that she's exposed to.
And how she becomes a celebrity or becomes notorious in her own way.
Right. And I think that was like part of why she wanted to get involved with him, was to, you know, become famous somehow. Even, I mean, she was out of her mind. So this also allowed me to, I was thinking about like madness and obsession and just like what can drive someone to go so far and completely humiliate herself, like also, and lose her sense of self by inventing an idea about someone else that is like a fiction. So.
And thank you. I just want to ask one more question, because I know you guys want to ask questions too. So I'm just, it's interesting how you have this comfort, or it seems as though you have this comfort in becoming other characters, or kind of getting into their space, or walking in their shoes to kind of really explore the creative possibilities.
Yeah.
And how do you? I mean, and that's fascinating to me. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, it gives you, I think also, I like to do so many different things, and they might not necessarily go together as a project unless I gave it like a conceptual backbone. So that's kind of what, for me, I think the character is like the backbone to the work, because it can all revolve around that concept rather than like, I'm interested in this and this and that. And it provides like a way to organize it also.
It makes it more real because you're invested in it, right?
Yeah, and it also makes me have to like control a project a little bit more rather than having like total freedom. And it gives me parameters, like, because I'm just all over the place, like, want to do this and this and that, and also to like embody someone else and have that, the research too is important, to really like learn about someone and what kind of letter would she write, and then to like duplicate that and go through my own editing process. And I do a lot of like weird kind of research, like reading like autobiographies or like weird like transcripts from television interviews. Like I have to dig really far. With her I did, at least.
And I think you went into the archives of institutions, I mean, of the prisons, right, and got access to some of the stuff, right?
No, that was a lie.
Oh, yeah, that was a lie. Fiction. Oh, that was good. You got me. Okay, you got me.
Yeah.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah, no. That was, I just like how, usually at the end of, an exhibition, it thanks like, the people who.
Oh, that was good. I thought that was sincere.
No, that was the only fiction on the press release, but yeah.
Okay, well, she got me.
Yeah.
That was good. That was good. Well, cool. Well, I think what's also amazing about Nina is that so much of her work she posts on Vimeo. She provides links through her site, so it's not as though you have to go to the gallery to see her current exhibition or see her group show. You have access to the website and all these different projects from anywhere. And I think that's just, even if you're sharing excerpts, I mean that's great for all of us to get access to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's important for me too. Yeah, to have it accessible.